let's talk about the final project. It's already posted. Go to left-hand side, boom, final project. Now, this is what your final project looks like to me. And the reason it looks this way is because my view is a little different from your view. But the reason I want to show you this is you can see it's really just step by step. However, I think when you see it, it's going to look like, oh, you click on each of these things and you will see the breakdown. I think you are going to see this all at once. So it's going to look a lot more overwhelming to you than it does to me. But I want you to know that it's really going to be okay. So I want you to go back to the first weeks of class. Check those notes out. We did 2 examples. You'll remember one was the Jamesons and one was our own example, which was synthetic marijuana. First thing I'm going to do is discuss section number 1. In one place, the client was Jameson's whiskey. And in our in-class example that we did together, the client was the mayor of New York. And the problem for Jameson's was not enough sales. They wanted to sell more. And the problem for the mayor of New York City was too many people dying of synthetic marijuana overdoses. This should be very familiar to you. The client has a problem and the client has a goal. For Jameson's, that goal was very particular. It was increase the number of sales without alienating the existing customers. And our in-class example, the client had a goal, which was reduce the number of New Yorkers dying from use of synthetic marijuana. You can see here that the client's goal is really just the opposite of the client's problem. The client wants to stop their problem. That's not always the case. With Jameson's, you can see that the client goal is a little more specific than their problem. So your step 1 is pretty much coming up with that. You are your own client. So let's move on to section 2, your topic research. The first step that we did in either case was that topic research. We basically researched everything and anything we could. And we had 2 ways of doing that. Remember, we had primary research and secondary research. Primary research is when we get it straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. And Jameson's has that kind of money, so they were able to do focus groups and things like that. So they researched everything about the topic of their problem, and they did that with primary research. So they used focus groups and whatnot. We, however, did not have the money for focus groups or the time for focus groups. So we researched everything about the problem of New Yorkers dying from use of synthetic marijuana. The reason we do all this research, of course, is not just to be experts on these problems, but because we're trying to answer 2 very important questions. The first question is, who do we want to talk to? The second question is, what action do we want them to take? Of course, who you want to talk to is called your target audience. So the target audience that Jameson's came up with from doing their topic research was what we called whiskey bros. They were in their 20s to 40s, mostly in business. They went out together, so they weren't on dates. And there was a whole bunch of other things that they found. What we found out is that we had a whole bunch of different target audiences that we could have pulled from, but we decided we were going to go with the bodega owners in Harlem and East Harlem. Remember, the only way we came up with those target audiences is through the topic research. I promise a lot of you are going to be really tempted to be like, I know what the client problem is, and I'm just going to choose these people. Doesn't work that way. It's really obvious when you do that. So I'm begging you, don't do that. Do the topic research. And once you lay out all your facts, you will be like, hey, you know what? I could talk to these people and tell them to do this, and that would help the client reach their goal. So remember, you get two things out of that first step of topic research. You get one, who you want to talk to, your target audience. Now let's move on to the second thing. What action do we want our audience to take that'll help achieve our client's goal? Jamesons wanted their target audience to ask for Jamesons by name. The action that we wanted our bodega owners in Harlem and East Harlem, our target audience, was to pledge not to sell synthetic marijuana. So that is step one and the result of step one. Now, the next thing we need to know is, how are we going to convince our group to take the action we want? And that's when we go to our next bit, is our target audience research. Remember, with Jameson's whiskey, our target audience was the whiskey bros. For our synthetic marijuana one, our target audience was bodega owners in Harlem and East Harlem. And to know how we should convince them, there are two things that will sound familiar that we need to research about them. You know them as demographics and psychographics. Remember, demographics are those hard facts, and psychographics are values, opinions, beliefs, associations, environments. And I can tell you right now, the hardest part of your research is going to be psychographics. So in our example with our whiskey bros, Jamesons had the money, so they did more primary research, this time primary research on these psychographics and demographics of their target audience. They discovered they were male, 20s to 40s, medium to high income earners. They were mostly in business and finance. Now, we found those demographics. We found that bodega owners survey in Harlem and East Harlem, and our demographics were majority Hispanic, majority male, between 40 and 70, living in Harlem and East Harlem, and majority either first or second generation, and many hired their own family as employees in their bodega. All right, so those are the demographics. Now we needed to look at the psychographics. So what were Jamesons?
So what did Jamesons find out about the psychographics of their target audience, the whiskey bros?
Well, when they asked them, what's a good night out? What makes like a great night out for you guys? They all agreed that they liked an quote unquote epic night out where there would be stories to tell and they'd make memories forever. They would laugh a lot. They'd probably poke fun at someone because they're able to make fun of themselves. They'd probably find some ladies and mix it up and have memories forever. When they talked about what they liked about whiskey, they used words like, oh, we like authentic and Irish, and we like it if it's old. They liked that it was, there was a real James Jameson. So for us, we found our bodega owner psychographics, and what we noticed out of those psychographics were that they no longer believe NYC is the best place to start a business. They believe that their neighborhood has gone downhill because of crime and loss of income. They agreed that their business has gone downhill because of crime and loss of income. They also, something like 89% of them agreed with the statement, the most dangerous job in all of New York City is working the overnight shift at a 24-hour bodega.
Now keep in mind, I'm not making these facts up. This is from my actual psychographic and demographic research. If you'll remember from the class and look in your notes, you'll see we found that bodega owners survey. So these are facts.
Now that we know their demographics and psychographics, now we can find how we are going to convince our target audience to take the action we want them to take. We know this stuff, we know this stuff. So to get the Whiskey Bros to specifically ask for Jameson's whiskey, the marketing company decided what they were going to do was associate Jameson's with everything that those Whiskey Bros liked. So epic stories with the tall tales. They would be funny so that they would laugh at someone. Someone would make kind of a fool of themselves in it. There would be women, but also they wanted to associate Jameson's with the authenticity, the Irishness, and the oldness of it. And if you remember those ads that we did look up, that Jameson's did, remember there was the Great Fire, and there was the one where he fought an octopus, that's called Lost Barrel. And if you want to look those up again, just go to YouTube and click on Jameson's Lost Barrel or Jameson's The Great Fire. And you will see the script of those have all of these things in it. In how we're going to convince target audience to take the action we want them to take, the way we are going to do that is we are going to tell our target audience, our bodega owners, that selling synthetic marijuana makes them less safe, makes their neighborhood go downhill, and make the overnight job even more dangerous for them and their family, since their families are also employees. The important thing is, when it comes time to write the script, I don't forget all this important stuff. A lot of the problems that students have is they'll do all this research and they will find out who their target audience is. They will find out what action they want to take. They will do the research to find out how to convince the target audience to do that. But when it comes to writing the script, they will just completely forget about all of the research they did. So I also want to show you an example of how I incorporated these things. Now, this script is not going to win any Oscars. However, it does the job. And your assignment does not have to win any Oscars either. What it does have to be is effective, though. Now, remember, what are the things that I really wanted to hit on? Those were family, crime, business, and associate all those things with selling synthetic marijuana. But the other things, don't forget the importance of the demographics. So they were Hispanic, they were in Harlem and East Harlem, they were between 40 and 50s. So first, let's talk about the script format. When you are writing the script, you do not have to use the single column feature film screenplay that we studied most of in the beginning half of the semester. Use something like this that's very simple. Just tell me what the shot is, tell me what we see, and tell me what we hear. So I'm going to read this. I'm not saying it's going to be exciting, but I want to highlight the importance thing. Shot. What kind of shot is it? This is a very wide, and it's a street in Harlem because that's the area we're talking. A bodega open for business. Nat sound, just so you know, means natural sound. In other words, in this situation, it would be the sounds of a street in Harlem in the middle of the day. Next shot, a medium of the owner, and he is speaking to the camera. He's a Hispanic man because our demographics say that the majority of bodega owners are Hispanic, in his 50s, because remember, the demographics said they were between their 40s and 70s, I think it said. And he talks to the camera from within his bodega. And he says, our bodega opened on this block in East Harlem in 1972. My dad opened it. So here we have my dad, because remember, it's, family was important, and East Harlem again. Extreme close-up on a photograph. Extreme close-up of a young boy's face. We pull out to reveal the entire photo. The young boy is the owner, and he is with his father. Their arms are around each other, proudly smiling inside the bodega. The owner says, I guess you could say I grew up here. An over-the-shoulder shot of a man at the counter who's purchasing some groceries from the owner. And I chose an over-the-shoulder shot because, remember, I wanted to, over-the-shoulder shot, show a relationship between two people. So I want to show a relationship of the owner and the man who's purchasing the groceries. The owner says, the neighborhood was much different when my dad was running the place. Safer. Remember, that is key because we are really trying to get them, convince them by talking about that selling K2 makes the crime go up. It makes them less safe. Wide shot of the street. A high man, by which I mean a man that is high, stumbles past the bodega, trips on the sidewalk, and doesn't get up. Natural sound. Medium shot. So back to a medium shot, the bodega owner talking to the camera. You know, the drug wave in the 80s was tough, but this, and now we go to a wide shot of a policeman and two EMTs crouching next to a convulsing man administering first aid. So again, crime, safety in the neighborhood. It's right outside of the bodega, and the owner says synthetic marijuana, it's different. It turns them into zombies or really violent, and they don't even know what's real. And then we have a close-up. I actually show a picture of a New York Times headline that says 103 victims OD in 3 days. Bodega owner, again to camera, says, my son works here helping out with things sometimes. Again, that's family. And in a wide shot, we show that 18-year-old son, Hispanic, and we see him working in their bodega. You know, and the owner says, I've been attacked by 2 people using synthetic marijuana in the past year. And then we see the bodega owner again. And what makes me so mad is that there are bodegas in this neighborhood selling it. So again, remember, we're talking about the neighborhood and how it makes them less safe by selling it. So a close-up on synthetic marijuana is often sold in these bright pink packages. So we see a close-up on one of these synthetic marijuana packages. And the owner says, we hear the owner, VO means voiceover. They're ruining their own neighborhood and they're endangering their employees and their families. And we see the bodega owner say, that's why I'm taking the pledge. And we see the bodega owner doing an action in a wide shot. He's taping up a flyer that has a big X over a packet of synthetic marijuana. And it says, synthetic marijuana not sold here. We love our neighborhood. And the owner explains, any bodega that cares about their neighborhood should take the pledge too. For the good of the neighborhood, their store, and their family. Because remember, it's all about safety, neighborhood, store, their business. And then we say, find out more at takethepledgeny.org. Again, it's not going to win any Oscars, but it does do the job. Now, you'll see that the last thing you have to do is storyboards. Please don't be scared. You've seen my storyboards, they're awful. Here we go. Now this, before I do that, let me show you what one of the big problems that students run into is. So what you'll see a lot of students do is they make this beautiful script and they'll say their shots. They've got a close and they've got a medium and then they've got a wide shot and then they've got a medium and they describe exactly what it's in. But for some reason, when it comes to their storyboards, you'll see they'll do something like this. Okay. Here's a medium of the bodega owner to camera. And then we see a wide shot of the bodega owner hanging something up. And then we see a medium of the bodega owner talking to the camera again. The problem here is not the quality of the drawing. The problem here is that this is not a medium shot and this is not a medium shot. People tend to just draw what's happening rather than what the shot is. And remember, that's not what a storyboard is for. A storyboard is to visualize what we're actually seeing or going to see when we look through the lens. So you can see with these things, I start with a very wide street in Harlem. And then we go to a medium on the man, an extreme close-up on a photograph on over the shoulder of the man purchasing groceries. You can see my work is not great. But if I say it's a very wide, this is a very wide. When I say there's an extreme close-up, there's an extreme close-up of this photograph, right? When I say there's an over the shoulder, there's an over the shoulder. That's someone's shoulder. And we're looking at the guy behind the counter. When I say there's a wide shot of a high man stumbling and falling down the street, that's what you get. You might not be able to tell that's what it is, but a medium shot of the, I know he looks like a walrus, but medium shot of the bodega owner, a close, and here's the, that's actually wrong. This is the wide shot of the police and the EMT. They're not good, but they are accurate. Okay. The other thing is, you'll notice I don't draw my own frames. I use this nice template. Okay. It makes it nice and neat. So those are your sections. Now here, I basically explain the rules, the assignment rules. Again, I know this will look different for you, but there are nice things here. There are hints, like cite your sources. There are some unacceptable sources. Don't really worry. But what I'm saying is you do have to read this stuff. Take it a step at a time. So this is just assignment rules. This is me explaining each step. So here I made you a little flow chart and then an example of a completed final project. This is important because I realize a lot of you guys have not been taught research, and that's not your fault. I think maybe high schools now are just like, oh, they can Google anything. But here's the thing. There's researching using the internet is different than researching, just using Google to look stuff up. And you can either spend like 7 minutes watching this video and making your life much easier when it comes to doing the research you have to, or you can spend 5 times as much time working on the internet, just going through pages and pages and pages of stuff and not being able to find what you want. There are easier ways to use the internet and find what you need than most folks know. And basically, these are all the sections just explained, and I give you some hints, and then I give you an example. This project is not about length. I don't care about your word count. What I do care about, and what I will be able to tell, is how much thought you have put into this. So, speaking of thought, some things to make your life in this project easier on yourself. 1, choose a topic that you find interesting. If you don't care about kids vaping, don't do that just because you think it's a thing to do. One of the best final projects I've ever had was from a student that was not particularly great student, but she did care about something that was a problem amongst people she knew. And that was that they were getting non-medical butt lifts. In other words, she had some friends that were getting butt lifts, like Brazilian butt lifts, but not from licensed physicians because that plastic surgery was too much money. So they were going into like these shady places where someone said, yeah, I'll give you a butt lift, Brazilian butt lift, and it's only, $300. And they were like, that's great. Well, the problem was that it wasn't proper plastic surgery, and they were just injecting silicone into these people's butts. Literally, the stuff that you use to seal up a bathtub tile is what they were having injected into their body. And then 3 years down the road, they would get pretty sick. So she said, all right, that's what I want to tackle. Was that a major world issue at the time? No, but it's something she saw and wanted to change. So she made an amazing media campaign called Botched Butts. I should do that properly spelled. Botched Butts. Now, Botched Butts, she did all her research. Just because this was something that was around her doesn't mean that she was just able to spout off her opinion and be like, well, I heard this girl did this and went there. She did proper research, but it was something that was interesting to her. She liked doing it, and it showed. But the other good thing about it is it was very specific. If you say that the problem you want to address is world hunger, that's very, very broad. The reason for hunger in America is very, very different from the reason for hunger in a place that is going through a civil war, or a place that is going through a famine, or a climate catastrophe. So if you try to do something worldwide, that's going to be pretty tough. Other things is if you're trying to do something with an audience that is really, really varied. For instance, if you were targeting men in America, well, are those 20-year-old men, 80-year-old men, things like that? Narrow it down. For instance, the example I used is, say your goal is reduce the number of dogs being killed in shelters. Well, the reason that dogs are being killed in the shelters in cities might be very different than the reason the dogs are being killed in shelters down south or in rural areas. If you have a problem, you say you want to, and I speak about this only because I know it, spaying and neuter. Your problem is too many dogs are not neutered. Well, the reason for dogs not being neutered in New York, and specifically the Bronx, where I worked with dogs, is very different than in rural Alabama. If you want to address like too many dogs are being surrendered to a shelter. Well, I can tell you one of the big reasons in New York that dogs are given up is because people move to a place where the landlord doesn't allow dogs. But in the South, most of the dogs that wound up in shelters are runaways / strays, and they're puppies that come from unneutered dogs. So what I'm saying is there's just with this one topic, there are so many different ways to go. So as you continue to think about your problem, try and get more and more specific. And what I want you to do is start thinking of what you might want to do as your project, as your proposal, and going through all the steps. And I want you to email me. Do you have to? No. But I think it's a good idea to email me if you are unsure about whether yours topic is going to be too hard or too big. Because if you email me, as some students already have, and tell me, hey, this is my idea, a lot of the times I can help you narrow it down. And I just as examples, botched butt was one thing. I've had people do things about video games, changes that they'd like to see because of problems that in the video gaming world. I've had people do things about sports. There are plenty of sport-related things that people want changed. Music producers, a lot of people about music and social media and how Spotify has the algorithm tends to support already bigger artists, and a lot of streaming services don't pay enough. So get creative. Think about something interesting to you. And I strongly suggest you email me so I can help you out and let you know, listen, I think this might be a little too much work, but if you do it this way, you'll have a lot easier time. This is due December 22. And the reason it is due December 22 is because I am giving you till the longest opportunity. I'm giving you to the very last minute because I have to turn in the grades on December 23. And if I don't have your final project on December 22 by the designated time, which is class time, I cannot submit your grade, which means I have to give you a 0 because I can't just submit some students' grades. I must submit all students' grades. And so I have literally about 14 hours that I do nonstop before I submit your final grades. So I can't accept any late assignments because I just don't have the time. I want to give you as much time as humanly possible. So that is it. Please look at the sections. Every section has examples. I will put up as much tips and tricks and things like that as I can. Again, on the 15th, when we have our optional Zoom review that I'll send you the link for, if you want to additionally talk about questions you might have about the project in addition to the review that we do for the exam, that is absolutely fine. Anything like that, you just let me know. All right.